On Tuesdays, Brighton Galleria Mall woke up slowly. The skylights let in polite squares of morning light that crawled across the terrazzo, and the only bold sounds were the steel grumbles of the delivery bay and the robotic pep of a juice bar blender. Jake Turner preferred Tuesdays. No weekend crowds, no school groups, just predictable foot traffic and time to observe. He liked that word. It sounded professional. Jake adjusted his duty belt and took a sip of coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. He had a security guard's gait, purposeful but casual, the kind meant to deter without alarming. He nodded to Rosa, a janitor mopping by the fountain. "Morning," he said. She nodded back. "Routine?" He passed TechZone, the mall's glossy electronics anchor, and paused at the edge of the storefront. The display wall shimmered with backlit laptops and tablets propped like porcelain. Inside, two teenage clerks stacked boxes while the assistant manager checked a clipboard with a pen chewed down to the plastic. That's when Jake saw him. A man in a charcoal suit and dark green tie standing just inside the threshold, hands folded around a slim leather portfolio. Early 40s, black, clean-shaven, with the kind of presence that makes space without asking. He wasn't touching anything, just watching. Eyes moving from end cap to display to ceiling camera, measuring. Jake's internal antenna twitched. He had stories he told about his instincts. How once he noticed a kid whose shoes were brand new, but whose backpack was too empty. Kid turned out to be a booster. Another time, a woman with a stroller that rattled wrong. Inside the stroller hood, he'd found 3 boxed fragrances. Jake's chest warmed whenever he told those stories. He forgot how many guesses he got wrong. The suited man, Marcus Hill, though Jake didn't know it yet, stepped deeper into TechZone. He paused at a mid-tier laptop, thumbed the hinge, watched the screen wake to the demo loop. He looked up at the ceiling again, counting beats like a conductor finding the tempo. Jake drifted a little closer, just outside the entrance line, where the mall tile met TechZone's darker flooring. He could hear the store playlist, a synthy instrumental, and the clerk explaining extended coverage to a customer. The man in the suit took out his phone, tapped something, slipped it back into his pocket. Observing, cataloging. "Got a live one?" Derek had asked him once, laughing. Jake had laughed too. He wasn't laughing now. He was writing a silent caption under the moment. Scouting. Maybe coordinating. He told himself he wasn't profiling. He was protecting property. He told himself a lot of things. He leaned back against a pillar where he could watch without being obvious, and told his coffee, "Let's see." 10 minutes became 15. The man in the suit made a slow, thoughtful lap of the store, pausing at the end of each aisle to scan sightlines. He spoke to no one, touched little, but took notes on his phone in short, precise gestures. He studied a locked glass case of high-end cameras, glanced at a camera in the ceiling corner, then at the emergency exit with the magnetic bar. Mapping it, Jake decided, clocking staff rotations, timing the blind spots. The narrative wrote itself behind his eyes. He keyed his radio, voice kept low. "Unit 1 to 3. Derek crackled back. "Go ahead, 1. Eyes on a male, mid-40s, suit and tie, inside TechZone. Been casing for about quarter hour. Checking cams and exits. I'm stationary, north pillar. Copy. Want me to float by?" "Negative for now. If he moves with merch, we intercept between zones." Derek whistled softly. "On your call, boss." Jake slipped his radio back and took another non-committal sip. He didn't consider that most thieves didn't wear tailored suits or linger under cameras. He didn't consider that TechZone had a visiting vendor schedule posted in the back office, or that the mall's own operations calendar had 2 back-to-back meetings this morning labeled Tenant Compliance Review and Anchor Store Audit. He considered only the story his gut liked. Inside, the assistant manager, Priya, caught the suited man's eye and gave a polite retail half-smile. He nodded back, professional, then checked the underside of a display laptop where the safety tether screwed into the base. He jotted another note. Priya's smile wavered into curiosity. Jake shifted his weight, debating the timing of an approach. Too early, and he'd look overeager. Too late, and the guy could be at the door with something pocketed. He watched the portfolio under the man's arm. Thin, maybe magnetic closure. Room for a tablet? A small camera? A charger block? Jake tried to remember if TechZone attached RFID tags to display cables. He couldn't. The suited man stepped out of TechZone, eyes sweeping the atrium, the fountain, the skylight glare, the far-off pretzel stand, and then checked the directory kiosk, as though confirming store numbers. He typed again. Then he turned, not toward an exit, not toward the parking deck, but toward Nordway Commons, the other anchor corridor, like someone with a checklist and a schedule. Unit 3, Jake said into his mic, pulse finding drums. Subject leaving tech zone, heading towards center court. I'm going to make contact for a voluntary bag check. Derek. Copy. I'm at the food court. Can be there in 2. Jake didn't wait. He pocketed the coffee, set his face to neutral, and stepped out from the pillar. The mall was never quiet when you wanted it to be. Even on a Tuesday morning, the sound of a confrontation travels. Shoppers slow. Conversations die mid-sentence. Phones tilt up. Jake knew that. He also knew the training words: professional presence, verbal judo, de-escalation. He told himself this would be smooth. He moved in front of the suited man at a polite distance, palms visible. Morning, sir. Mall security. A nod to the badge. Mind if I ask you a couple quick questions? The man stopped, composed. Up close, Jake noticed details he hadn't clocked. The subtle stitching on the lapels, the scuffs on the leather portfolio. Used, not showy. The man's eyes were steady, watchful, not defensive. Good morning, he said. His voice had that calm, middle manager cadence you only get from years of being listened to. What can I help you with? We've had some concerns in Tech Zone lately, Jake said, choosing the soft euphemism. We're asking folks to cooperate with random bag checks when leaving electronics retailers. The man's gaze flicked down to the portfolio, then back to Jake. Random? He asked, not unkindly. Random, Jake repeated, nodding. Should only take a second. The man's posture didn't change. He wasn't bristling. He was weighing. And what specific concern prompted you to select me? His tone remained level. I didn't see you stop the 2 teenagers who left with boxed headphones, nor the gentleman with the gaming keyboard. Jake felt heat light in his neck. He hadn't noticed either. Sir, I observed you in the store for an extended period, taking notes, examining security fixtures. That pattern is called an audit, the man said, the first hint of steel sharpening the vowels. He reached into his inner pocket slowly, palms telegraphing the motion, pulled a slim wallet, flipped it open, and offered it. Jake looked. The badge wasn't police, it was better. Here. Brighton Galleria Mall, Administration. The name below the crest, Marcus Hill. Title, Executive Director. The ambient noise of the mall seemed to duck for a beat, like a wave withdrawing. Jake's brain did a small stutter step. His mouth tried to catch up. I didn't realize... I gathered, Marcus said, closing the wallet with a soft click. His eyes remained on Jake's, not unkind but unyielding. Around them, a small halo of curiosity had formed. Rosa with her mop paused. A mother with a stroller slowed. A kiosk vendor pretending to rearrange phone cases while angling for a better view. Someone's camera lens bloomed in peripheral vision. Jake forced his shoulders square. Regardless of position, sir, we still need to ensure... What did you need to ensure? Marcus asked. That the black man in a suit wasn't stealing your display keyboards? The sentence landed without volume. Jake felt its weight anyway. I selected based on behavior, Jake said, hearing the defensiveness, even as he tried to sand it down. Not what? Marcus asked quietly. Jake's radio hissed. Unit 1, you need me? Derek's voice felt miles away. Jake didn't answer. Marcus exhaled, a measured release. Let's step out of the walkway, he said, tilting his head toward a bench under the ficus. We're blocking traffic. The way he said we rearranged the power in the space. Jake moved first, acutely aware of his boots on tile, of the way the distance between them dictated who followed whom. He sat because Marcus sat. He set his hands on his knees because Marcus folded his neatly portfolio atop them like a gavel. It was, unmistakably, a meeting. Up close, the executive tone wasn't an affectation. It was muscle memory. Marcus didn't posture or raise his voice. He organized the space with civility, the kind of civility that left no ambiguity about who was running the agenda. Officer, Marcus prompted. Turner. Jake Turner, he said. Mr. Turner, Marcus said with the flat courtesy of HR letters, I'd like to understand the decision tree that led you to stop me for a random search. Jake swallowed. He knew the policy manual. Voluntary checks may be requested when reasonable suspicion suggests concealment of unpaid merchandise. He also knew the line. Reasonable suspicion must be based on articulable facts. He heard himself try on the language. I observed you focusing on security fixtures rather than products, monitoring exits and camera positions, and taking notes while moving between displays. In my experience, that cluster of behaviors sometimes correlates with organized theft. Marcus nodded once, acknowledgement, not agreement. And in your experience, how often does that cluster of behaviors correlate with a contracted executive conducting an in-person audit of a tenant's compliance with lease-required security standards? Jake had no answer. Marcus flipped open his portfolio, revealing a printed agenda stamped with the mall's letterhead. The first line, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Tech Zone, compliance walkthrough, display tethering, camera angles, incident logs. I schedule these monthly, Marcus said, sliding the sheet so Jake could read without touching. I also visit unannounced, because announced visits test how people behave when they know they're watched. Unannounced visits test reality. He tapped another page, a map of the mall with cameras marked in red. The cameras above Tech Zone's west entrance have been out of alignment since last Thursday's balloon arch event. The helium tanks bumped the mounting. I wanted to see if Tech Zone reported it. They did not. That will be addressed in writing. He flipped the page back. Tidy. Does this align with the casing you observed? Jake felt himself shrink inside his uniform. I didn't know about the balloon arch, he said, the sentence absurd as it left his mouth. No, Marcus agreed, not unkindly. You didn't. Because you aren't looped into operations. That's fine. It is not your job to know my calendar. It is your job to know your biases. The word landed with surgical precision. Not a hammer, a scalpel. Marcus looked past Jake to the small circle of onlookers. He did not flush or flinch. He had navigated harder rooms than this. Boardrooms with men who mistook condescension for wit. City council meetings with microphones that died mid-sentence. Tenant roundtables where the loudest voices were rarely the most accurate. He knew how to hold his face when people were watching. Per our contract, he continued, tone returning to procedural, security officers are required to treat all patrons, tenants, contractors, and visitors with dignity and respect, and base investigative actions on behavior tied to policy violations, not personal characteristics. Yours is not the first questionable stop I've been forwarded this quarter. It is, however, the first involving me personally. Jake felt the audience again, the camera phones, the curiosity. He pictured his supervisor, Ms. Larkin, getting a call before lunch. He pictured the incident report he'd have to write and how it would read, stopped executive director for random search. Executive director produced credentials. Conversation ensued. He pictured the part of himself that liked to be right, shrinking back from the light. Mr. Turner, Marcus said, gentler now, do you understand how this looked? How it felt? Not just to me, but to every person who watched you pull aside the black guy in a suit while 5 other customers strolled by with bags and boxes. Jake pressed his fingers together to stop them from fidgeting. I can see that, he said quietly, and then, because honesty sometimes comes only when your practiced lines run out, I messed this up. Marcus's expression softened by a single degree. I appreciate you saying that. He closed the portfolio. The conversation wasn't over. It was pivoting. Marcus didn't lecture. He structured. Here's what will happen, he said, the cadence of an action plan steadying the air. You'll accompany me to Tech Zone. You'll introduce yourself to the assistant manager, and you will observe while I conduct the compliance walkthrough you interrupted. You will not speak unless spoken to. Afterward, we will meet with your supervisor, and we will review the mall's bias awareness policy, de-escalation protocols, and the difference between suspicion and scrutiny. Understood? Yes, sir, Jake said, the words coming both automatically and sincerely. They walked together, an odd pair, executive and guard, back to tech zone. The onlookers lost interest. The mall's noise expanded to fill the space they left behind. Inside the store, Priya looked up, eyebrows lifting at the sight of Marcus. She straightened like a ruler. "Mr. Hill," she said quickly. "Good morning. I wasn't expecting—" "Unannounced visit," Marcus said, smiling with just his mouth. "Let's do a quick walk." He nodded toward Jake. "Officer Turner will be shadowing." Priya's eyes flashed curiosity, but she said nothing. Marcus moved through the store with the same patient attention Jake had misread. He checked the tethers on the display laptops. 2 loose, 1 missing a set screw. He noted a blind spot in the camera's field where stacked boxes formed a perfect visual shield. He asked to see the incident log. A page was missing from last week. "Find it," he said, not unkindly. "And if it can't be found, write the loss." Priya nodded, cheeks coloring. At the glass camera case, Marcus pointed at the lock cylinder. "This is keyed to an outdated system. It should have been swapped during last quarter's upgrade. Order the new cores today." Priya wrote it down. Jake watched, taking in a domain that had seemed opaque from the corridor. It wasn't that Marcus looked for theft. He looked for the places where negligence and opportunity shook hands. As they moved, a boy of about 12 drifted too near a display. His mother called, "Jalen, hands!" Jalen snapped his hands behind his back dramatically, grinning. Marcus smiled at him. "You like cameras?" he asked. Jalen nodded. "Come back Saturday. There's a photography workshop in the community room, hour-long, free. Tell them Marcus sent you." The boy lit up. Jake filed that too. The way authority could be invitation, not just correction. Back at the threshold, Marcus thanked Priya and asked her to email the updated incident log by end of day. She promised she would. He turned to Jake. "Walk," he said, heading for the administrative corridor. They passed a staff-only door with a paper sign reading, "Tenant Council at 2 p.m. Marcus's phone buzzed. He ignored it. "When you said behavior-based," he said, "you weren't wrong. Behavior matters. But behavior isn't just what a person is doing. It's why they might be doing it, in the context you don't see." He glanced at Jake. "What context do you think you missed today?" Jake forced himself not to dodge. "Your role, the audit, the cameras, the schedule. That tech zone has issues that," he swallowed, "that my version of behavior is influenced by what I expect to see. And what you expect," Marcus said, "is shaped by what you've been taught to fear. That's not a moral failing. It's a human problem. But if you carry a badge, you owe it to everyone in this building to notice when your fear is writing your report." He paused at the door labeled security. "Do you want to be good at this job, Mr. Turner? Or just good at being certain?" The distinction sliced clean. Jake felt it all the way down. "I want to be good at the job," he said. "I do." "Good," Marcus said. "Then, let's make you better." Ms. Larkin, the security supervisor, wore her stress like a blazer, tailored, ever-present. She looked from Marcus to Jake to the clock, and chose diplomacy. "Mr. Hill, to what do we owe the honor?" Marcus didn't waste time. He relayed the encounter without theatrics, facts, sequence, policy citations, reserving judgment for the part where it belonged, the fix. Jake listened, cheeks warm, hands flat on his thighs to keep them from fidgeting. "I'm not recommending termination," Marcus concluded. Jake exhaled. "I am recommending an immediate remedial plan. Officer Turner will complete the full 8-hour bias awareness and practical de-escalation course by Friday. He will shadow a senior officer for 2 weeks, Officer Ramirez, ideally, because she excels at boundary setting without escalation. He will also complete 3 rotating tenant rides, shadowing a store manager, a janitorial supervisor, and a maintenance engineer, to understand how problems look from other vantage points. Finally, he'll review last quarter's incident reports and choose 5 examples where a different approach might have produced a better outcome. He'll present that to me and to you." Ms. Larkin nodded, taking notes briskly. "Approved. I'll enroll him now and coordinate Ramirez's schedule." She turned to Jake, eyebrows raised. "You good with that?" "Yes," Jake said, grateful for the structure, even as embarrassment prickled his ears. "Yes, ma'am." Marcus looked at Jake. There's one more piece, he said. You're going to help me fix what you dented, publicly. Not with a spectacle, with presence. He outlined the plan. The next morning, he and Jake would stand together in Tech Zone for 20 minutes at opening, greeting customers with Priya. They'd be visible, approachable. Not to perform an apology, but to model the partnership the mall needed to show. And this afternoon, Marcus added, you and I will review camera placements by the West Atrium. You saw me looking at them. I want you to see what I saw. Then you'll propose 2 changes. It wasn't punishment. It was education disguised as work. It was also accountability with teeth. Mr. Turner, Marcus said, softer now that the logistics were set, you should know something. I grew up working class. My mother cleaned offices at night and ate her dinner in the car between jobs. My first suit was from a thrift store and smelled like someone else's cologne for months. People looked through me for a long time. Then they started looking at me, but not seeing me. When you stopped me today, it felt like both at once. He didn't make Jake sit in that alone. You won't always get this perfect. Neither do I. But the difference between I'm right and I'm learning is the difference between a mall people tolerate and a community people choose. Jake nodded, throat tight. Thank you for not crushing me, he said, the word clumsy but honest. I'm not interested in crushing, Marcus said. I'm interested in growth. Crushing is easy. Growth keeps the lights on. They spent the next hour on the mezzanine with a maintenance ladder, nudging camera housings 2 degrees this way, 3 that. Marcus showed Jake how glare from the skylight created a phantom blind spot at noon. Jake suggested angling a camera to catch the reflection off the glossy kiosk counter. Marcus nodded approval. Good, he said. That's a systems brain. Use that more than your suspicion. By the time they were done, the noon crowd had begun to swell, a trickle thickening to a stream. Jake felt oddly energized, humble, awake. The next morning, Jake arrived 10 minutes early to Tech Zone. He had polished his boots. He had also written a page of notes, questions to ask, things to watch for that didn't feel like gotchas, but like care. Priya met him with a cautious smile that warmed when she saw Marcus walking up behind him with 2 coffees and a bag of bakery muffins. They stood at the entrance as the gate rolled up. Marcus greeted the first customers by name. How did he know their names, Jake wondered. Then remembered Brighton Galleria had repeat faces, and Marcus made a habit of learning them. A retiree named Mr. Caldwell asked about his tablet repair. Marcus remembered the ticket number. A young couple looked at a laptop for school. Marcus stepped back and let Priya shine, only interjecting to compliment Priya's explanation of storage versus memory, like a coach praising a good play. Jake didn't hide. When a shopper who had filmed part of yesterday's confrontation hovered at the threshold with a skeptical look, Jake met it. Morning, he said. Welcome in. The shopper's face softened a fraction, and they walked past. Not absolution exactly, but oxygen. After the rush, Marcus gathered Priya and Jake for a 5-minute huddle. 2 things went right, he said, holding up fingers. 1, we greeted, not guarded. People feel that. 2, Priya, your incident log update was clean. Thank you. 1 thing to improve, keep the west side boxes under the display sightline. Jake saw the blind spot yesterday. Let's not rebuild it with cardboard. Priya laughed, relieved, and promised to move the stack. At 2 p.m., Marcus chaired the tenant council meeting in the community room. Jake sat in the back with Rosa, the janitor, and Tomas from maintenance, the security polo blending with the crowd instead of patrolling it. Marcus started with numbers, foot traffic, vacancy rates, upcoming events, then pivoted to culture. I want to talk about how we see one another, he said. Security, tenants, contractors, guests. Last quarter, we had 3 incidents where assumptions escalated interactions that didn't need escalating. We're addressing that with training and with changes to how we evaluate success. A stop that ends with an apology is not a success metric. A day with no unnecessary stops is. He didn't name Jake. He didn't need to. He named the practice, he named the fix, he invited ownership. He outlined a new See and Serve initiative, 5 behaviors every employee could adopt that shifted focus from catching to caring. Proactive greetings, wayfinding help, noticing accessibility barriers, checking on solo teens with respect rather than suspicion, and flagging environmental risks, like the box stack blind spot, before they become losses. Later in the corridor, Rosa nudged Jake. "He's good," she said of Marcus, with the impressed affection of someone who has seen a lot of managers come and go. "He is," Jake said. He felt a quiet pride that had nothing to do with catching anyone. In the evening after his shift, Jake sat at his kitchen table with the stack of incident reports Ms. Larkin had printed. He read them with new eyes, underlining places where a greeting might have replaced a glare, where asking, "Can I help you find something?" might have interrupted the need for an, "Excuse me, sir." He wrote notes in the margins for his presentation. Offer assistance first. Name what you see, not what you fear. Ask why, before you assume how. 2 weeks later, he stood in the small conference room with Ms. Larkin and Marcus and presented his analysis. He didn't perform remorse. He demonstrated growth. He described a plan for rotating presence at anchor stores, not to hunt, but to help during rushes. He suggested a monthly cross-department walk, security, janitorial, maintenance, 2 tenants, so everyone could see the mall through different eyes. He proposed measuring positive contacts, not just stops and detainments. Marcus listened, asked 2 hard questions, then said, "Approved, pilot for 60 days. In the months that followed, Brighton Galleria felt different in ways that didn't show up on a single chart, but accumulated in the bones of the place. Fewer tense whispers, more waves between kiosk vendors and guards. A teenager who used to get side-eyed in skate shoes, now carrying tripod gear to that Saturday workshop, and showing Rosa his photos while she ate her lunch. Jake still made stops. Sometimes he had to. But he made them later, with more information, after trying 3 other options first. He learned to narrate his thinking aloud. "Here's what I'm seeing. Help me understand what you're doing," so people could step into the conversation rather than brace for it. He learned that being good at the job meant being good at doubt. One quiet Tuesday, he rounded the corner by Tech Zone and found Marcus standing there, eyes on a new camera angle they'd installed together, coffee in one hand. "How's the pilot?" Marcus asked. "Working," Jake said simply. Then after a beat, "Thank you for the second chance." Marcus took a thoughtful sip. "You earned it," he said. "Now go earn the next." He did. And Brighton Galleria, steel, glass, cinnamon air, became a little less about suspicion and a little more about stewardship, one Tuesday at a time,